All right, 7:07 in the morning when you hear the King's second hour. We got to move fast and quickly and efficiently because Ted and I have to get through 11 of these propositions. A lot of you, yes, sir?
Luckily, it's only 10.
Oh, 10. Wow. See, this is perfect, right? This is like Scotty from Star Trek when Kirk would go, "How long to fix the warp drive?" And he says, "I can do it in 4 hours," but he really knew he could do it in an hour. Then he'd do that, and you go, Scotty, you're a miracle worker. So anyway, 10.
10. Remember the one that was free and fair
right.
election, Scott, did not make the signature requirement, so it's been moved out.
That's true.
But 10s, for us, and the way we tend to go down rabbit holes, this could be an interesting conversation if we can make it. We've got a goal.
We do have a goal. And again, my hope is, just like we did previously, I made 2 years ago, I did a YouTube of our discussion, and about 700 to 800 people watched it for a little guidance. Well, you poor bastards.
I think the most important thing, and we can get that done, is just to have everybody understand what the legislation means. And I'm not going to tell you we're going to be able to explain it in perfect detail, but it should spark their interest, and then they can go to the book of knowledge that you've got in front of you, the huge document that was sent out about what's on my ballot. And I suggest everybody not to be scared by it, because the majority of the letters that were written and submitted were on that free and fair elections, which is no longer on the ballot.
Right.
So you can go
of
in
the
here.
316, 50 of them are for.
It's true. That part of it's gone. But the most important thing is for people to truly understand what it is they're voting on. You know, I mean, sure, you're going to have your list of ideas. Organizations like SLC are going to put their list of ideas out. You're going to get so many people telling you how to vote.
Yep.
But when you go in, you know, if you want to trust your crazy Uncle Joe or whoever you want to do, that's good. But just realize that every vote that you make has ramifications. So I encourage people, if it's an issue that you think you're really concerned about, do a little bit of research. You got plenty of time. Ballots go out today.
Yeah.
So
correct.
The fun has begun.
All right, let's get going. Proposition 128, Voter Protection Act court determinations would voter protect the legislator's power to amend, supersede, or appropriate, divert funds created by an initiative or referendum measure if found to contain illegal or unconstitutional language.
Yes. Now remember, Chris, these first 5 that we're going to go over are what are referred to as legislative referred constitutional amendments. So all of these have to go to the voters to change the Constitution. A couple of them actually have bills that have passed, but if the voters don't support it, bills that have passed the legislature and been signed into law, but if the voters don't support it, they won't get enacted. This is not one of them. The first 2 we're going to talk about are directly impactful of citizens' initiatives. And this one, the language, if you get in and read about the pros and the cons against it, the pros are saying that citizens' initiatives are too easy, they're too broadband, citizens aren't good at writing statutes.
Right.
The cons are this is going to try to limit the ability for citizens to write initiatives, because all it takes is for a single piece to be identified as unconstitutional, either by the U.S. Supreme Court or the Arizona Supreme Court.
So we always talk about this. The problem with our process, right, is we get the signatures, we throw it out. Very rarely does it get challenged before it gets voted on.
Correct.
Right? Then it happens, and then we go to court, right? And then maybe we figure it out, but then lots of times you're stuck with it anyway.
Absolutely, and it's really ironic the way that it plays out is the constitutional ones are most likely challenged prior to court on a citizens initiative we're talking about now.
Right.
And then the statutory ones are challenged after. And those are the ones where they throw all sorts of spaghetti just trying to get something to limit the bill. The challenge on this one is it's literally a change to the current guidance on the Voter Protection Act. And what it did is, under the things that allow the legislatures to make changes, to divert funds, to do things, they've just added the language that says, or unless the measure is found to contain illegal or unconstitutional language by the Arizona Supreme Court or the United States Supreme Court. And that's pretty broad. So it doesn't define what they can actually change. It just says these are the actions that they're currently prohibited from doing because of voter protection. And if something's found illegal in it, then does it make
the proposition creator / writer think a little bit more? Does it or not? I don't know.
It should,
right?
Because what it may help prevent is that what I just talked about where you're throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping some sticks, and if some of it gets ruled illegal later, you don't care. And that's termed sweeteners. It makes a initiative look better, but it could also have the flip side effect if there's something that's fairly minor in the initiative that's turned over by the
Chris is feeling like a yes on
way.
this one. That's where I'm at.
This one is one that I think people really have to look at. And it really just comes down to whether you believe in citizens initiatives or not. We've seen so many bad citizens initiatives. And we've talked about those on the air a lot.
Yeah.
I think they serve a purpose. They're a Western United States purpose, but it's a challenge and it's really not the citizens initiative that hurts it. It's the Voter Protection Act that was voted on by the citizens back in the 90s that's created the problem. If we were to modify the Voter Protection Act to give some of the ability to fix some of these items, then you wouldn't need this. This is what that's trying to attack at. It's the how restrictive the voter protection is, and then we get stuck with
Ted's going to be very educational. D. Simone's a yes on this. Prop 129, a single subject title, require initiative measures to cover only one subject and matters relating to that subject, and require the subject to be expressed in the title of the initiative measure, specifies that if a subject covered in an initiative is not expressed in the title, the subjects not covered in the title are considered void from the initiative.
And this is another one that's directed at the Citizens Initiative, and it is all of 6 lines. So here it goes. Every initiative measure shall embrace but one subject and matters properly connected therewithin, which subject shall be expressed in the title. But if any subject shall be embraced in an initiative measure which shall not be expressed in the title, such initiative measure shall be void as to so much thereof of. And you wonder why legislation is hard to understand. So much thereof as shall not be embraced in the title. So it does restrict it to a single issue. When it gets down to the conversation of it, it says that it can have items embedded in it as long as they have to do with that initiative, with that subject.
Right.
So it is going to make it a little bit different. I don't think this one would have as much impact on the previous one. It's just going to make that you can't use fancy terms and names that, as we always see.
Well, I feel like the one that was tossed, the free and fair elections
one,
one,
a perfect example,
right? 22 pages of crap.
Well,
right.
We've both agreed that the longer an initiative is, probably the more troubling it is. Because and the number of items under that subject. The question will be, what's going to end up in court on this one will be free and fair elections. If they had changed it to election changes to enhance voter participation, then as long as everything under there is still taking a step in that direction, it's going to probably end up being left to the courts to determine if that's true or not.
I think this brings a little more sanity to the whole thing. So Chris is a yes.
I tend to agree on that one, especially if the way they can enforce the titles will actually tell you what's in the bill, because right now they don't.
All right, I'm going to try and knock out 2 more here before we go to break, because we got to get going.
And I think the next 2 are pretty simple.
Right, property tax exemptions provide a property tax cut for veterans with disabilities. We already offer property tax cuts to widows and veterans.
This really is kind of a clarification of laws. One, it's going to actually eliminate the eligibility of any veterans who fought in World War I or prior, because believe it or not, those are still on the books. But what it really does is, right now there's a law in Arizona that required you, and it became unconstitutional. It was originally passed and required the veteran to be a resident of Arizona prior to their deployment and service to be eligible for this exemption.
Wow.
So this is taking that away, and that was eventually ruled unconstitutional both by the Arizona Supreme Court, and I don't think it therefore didn't get to the U.S. Supreme Court. But that would clarify that. So now veterans who have served our country, who are now living in the country, would be eligible. It also expanded. Now, this is one of those ones that a law has been signed by the governor that effectively takes the value. Right now, the legislature every year can consider and change the value of what that tax exemption will make. They've passed a law that will set it at 22 limits, and then it will be inflation adjusted from that point forward.
So that sounds like a yes to me, for me personally.
I would agree with that one.
All right, let's get one more.
And by the way, that's one of the ones. There's several of these that had 0 letters in the book of arguments against. So
wow.
It had nobody against it, only people in favor of it.
All right, let's go to Lieutenant Governor joint ticket.
Another one that has a bill that's been passed. There's like 27 of the 50 states. A majority of the states have lieutenant governors. As many people don't realize now, the Secretary of State is the one that proceeds to be the governor position if the governor leads.
We've had that happen a couple of times.
4 of the last 10 Secretary of States have ended up being governor. This would require the governor to select a running mate, effectively, to be the lieutenant governor candidate. So therefore, it's more than likely going to be in the same party.
Right.
And then they run as a ticket. That lieutenant governor will be the one that now would take the governor's role if something happened to the governor or the governor left office.
So there's no arguments against this one.
There's no arguments
in the book.
against it because of primarily because of the law that was passed and signed by the governor. It requires the lieutenant governor, should this pass, has to be part of the executive appointments of the governor, and it specifically says the director of the Office of Administration, so basically run Arizona Administration Department, or any other position that the governor is allowed to appoint to. So it could be the director of ADOT, could be the director, but the biggest argument against it when people saw it is, now we're just going to have another paid person that may not really do anything. But that law that was passed by the legislature stated, no, they will take one of the positions currently authorized to be funded by the governor. So the funding's already there.
I'm a yes. I'm a yes on this too. All right. You're not a yes? You're a no?
No way.
Why?
Because it works fine if your ticket wins. If it doesn't, now both positions are there's just no way.
What it really does, Matt, is it just ensures that if the transition of power occurs, it's going to be within the party, and that's going to work both. That could work both ways. When Democrat or
you sound like a guy who's worried about Republicans winning races.
No, the problem I've got with our current setup,
that's what the Democrats like this way, because they could sneak in a Secretary of State.
And it's not just for the parties concerned, but nobody really considers that when they're picking the Secretary of State, you're picking potentially the next governor. Not enough people are aware of that. And I think if you do run as a ticket, then everybody knows exactly who it is that will become governor should this governor not.
Why do you think the Deuce didn't appoint himself Senate? Because the last thing they wanted was Katie Hobbs becoming the governor of Arizona.
Interesting.
So
I think it is what you'd call. It eliminates that possibility for having a second party that's hedging it and preventing something like that. There are some people that probably didn't want Governor Ducey to enter the Senate race, and they saw this as an opportunity. I personally don't believe he was going to anyway, but that's it comes down to your personal thought. I think the biggest challenge is people are unaware that the Secretary of State is probably easily the second most important position on our statewide ballots, because 4 out of the last 10 have become governor of the state of Arizona.
7:19 in the morning, Ted Maxwell, Christy Simone. We've nailed out 4 of 10. Holy crap.
We're ahead of pace.
Way ahead of pace. Ted Maxwell and I have already done 4 propositions, but as Han Solo said in Star Wars, don't get cocky, kid.
We're not. We won't do that yet. After we cover this next one, then you're going to have to figure out if you want to go in order on the numbers or if we want to save the citizens' initiatives for last.
Let's real quick. So the next one, 132, is require 60% of voters to approve an initiative. I'm a yes on this.
This is one that I personally am torn on as an individual, because I do believe that we require 2/3 of the vote for the legislators, or we require supermajority for the legislators to raise taxes. Should we have something other than a 50+1 on the for the voters to raise taxes for initiative? The reason I think 60 is a huge number. If you look at any election, it's difficult.
We've been handcuffed with all these little bad taxes over the years, right? We saw that after the 2008 crash, right? And then we saw that the money raised by these taxes, when it got to some of the local places like TUSD, didn't spend it on the teachers they were supposed to and all these things. So
2 different issues on that, though, Chris, and I agree with.
But in the end, if it makes it harder to get to that, I'm good with it.
Then you are the perfect person for what's going to be a yes on this one.
Yeah,
60 is a big number. Some other states have increases. I do believe there should be extra caution when we're raising taxes through a citizens initiative, because that's where you can get out of control.
Correct.
But I think 60 is a huge number. And remember, this is the bill that started in the legislature to make 60 for any citizens initiative. And to me, that would have been a fatal mistake. And then they realized that they wanted to modify it and go to taxes. So this is one that's got
when I look at the voter initiatives kind of track record over the last so many years, not impressed.
Oh, there's been a ton of problems, and because again with the Voter Protection Act that's in place, combined with the ease of our citizen initiative process, we get a lot of folks from outside the state trying to drive these as well. This is one that I would recommend. There's some very bright folks on both sides of this argument writing letters to the editor. Letters to the editor, letters into your ballot handbook. This is one I would just suggest everybody reads, because it is one that I think you need to kind of you get down to and understand.
So let me run just umpire John wanted me to make sure I got the numbers correct. So we got 128, which is voter protection court determinations. That's a yes for Chris. 129 is the single subject. That's a yes for Chris. Property tax exemptions for veterans with disabilities. That's a yes for Chris.
And that's Prop 130.
Thank you.
Get the number out there.
You're right. That's what he wanted, and I didn't do it. Prop 131, Lieutenant Governor joint ticket, which Matt might be coming our way after our break discussion. Maybe. Not yet. I'm not making the commitment. He's shaking his head hard. 131, that's a yes for me, and then we just did supermajority vote.
So what I'm hearing so far, Chris, is you got 5 yes votes.
That's crazy.
You're making this way too easy on yourself.
That is very crazy.
There is. Just throw it out on the Prop 132 if somebody's not going to read. It's got support of groups like NAIOP, the Goldwater Institute, Governor Ducey.
What's an NAIOP?
That's a good question. I knew I should know.
All right, let's go to the against, because that's the more fun part, okay? I got the League of Women Voters, okay, which is usually very liberal, the way they've been going. The Arizona Education Association, so that's another problem. What else do we got here?
I will stick with my request. Read some of the letters, see it. Will Humble makes a decent case in there, I believe, as well.
Yeah, Will Humble's been wrong the last 2 years on most things. David Lujan, Children's Action Alliance, the Peoria Teachers Union, the Glendale Teachers Union. Oh, I already got it. This is a way yes, guys. This is a yes with the capital Y, like real big. We got 5 down.
That was not a good session for us. But we're still halfway.
So we still got the predatory debt collection coming up, voters' right to know, and then we got to do some other ones. So,
and if we keep this up, you're not even going to have to post your suggested votes. It's going to be all yeses, and it's going to be straight.
All propositions Y. No, I'm just kidding.
I think that will change in the next half hour.
310 is looking like a no for me, which is the fire district one.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we'll talk about that. So a little controversy. We're starting to get hit. I've seen a bunch of commercials on Proposition 209, which is the Predatory Debt Collection Protection Act.
This is one of those ones that I believe if you had a single subject law, the title in the name itself could invalidate the proposition, because it doesn't really describe what it's doing. This is one that effectively it tries to give the appearance that it's only talking about healthcare services and collection,
and that's what the ad talks about, right? The ad's like, you don't want the hospitals, the doctors to take away your house and blah blah blah.
But it is broader than that, is our understanding from everything that we've read and what we've looked at. Changes the numbers, ties them then on what the exemptions could be, but it also is going to impact any debt collector effectively, because the debt loans are made to individuals, to companies, to small companies, and to others based on the confidence level they're going to have of getting their money back. This will decrease that, which will actually we believe will make money less available to those in most need, whether it's a small business, whether it's individuals that need some help in a stopgap situation. It's going to put higher demands on the collateral you're going to have to put down and sign over titles and do stuff where it can't be a debt collection issue. It's too broad. It's not fundamentally good. It's funded predominantly from unions and organizations outside the state of Arizona. So this is one.
What is this healthcare?
This might be the only time I say this today, but this is one that SCLC has come out in opposition to.
What is Healthcare Rising? Are they the people? Everyone is sponsored by Healthcare Rising. In the 4A, have you ever heard of these people?
I have not. I would. You bet that if you take a look at it, it's probably.
So every single one of these 4 is all healthcare rising? They must have paid the.
They would probably have a
fee.
link to the folks that ran the initiative, and they then established that organization. Is my guess.
All right, Prop 209 is a no. Look at that. I have a no today.
And for the record, too, the 200 series is the Citizens Initiatives. So that was the first Citizens Initiative that we've talked about on the ballot.
So Terry Goddard's dark money.
Right. This
Prop
one's
211.
been to the ballot several times. It effectively changes that any independent expenditure committee, and that's inside the policy funding for campaigns, whether they're for individuals or for there's a way to spend money and not see who ultimately the money came from. That's the truth. Citizens United changed a lot of the laws of the land, gave the corporations the ability to make statements as citizens. And this is an attempt to try to allow the voters to know who really is funding either the for campaign or the against campaign.
So you kids you kids are a yes on this.
We are.
All right.
SALC, and that. So I'll say it for the second time now. SALCs, we are against. Or sorry, we're a yes on this campaign on this initiative.
So there's two things here for me, right? So one, this magic line in here. Okay, so it says current state law. Anything that's, quote, a social welfare organization from having to list their contributors. Will they actually now have to, the social welfare contributor, if this passes, they'll be able, I just love social welfare organizations.
I know, you like saying that. What it does is it will make anybody that makes any entity that makes a single donation of $50,000 to a statewide or $25,000 to a local have to identify the individuals or individual organizations that gave more than $5,000 on the state, $2,500 on the local.
Now, I just want to tell you the local perspective on this. There are certain IEs that play in Tucson.
Absolutely.
Right, that some people who would like to change how Tucson possibly could get better only contribute to stuff that they'll be shielded from because they know, especially if they're in sort of land development or anything, that the city and the county will just be total jerks to you. So that's the other side of this.
I mean, I've been involved in many campaigns since I joined SLC, and there's always an entity out there that we would tell people to put their money into as well because they wanted to be shielded. The biggest concern here is you can shield a lot of money, outside money, that's coming into the state from sources or entities that are trying to influence laws in Arizona, and there's no way to really identify them. And that's what you're trying to get at. Will it impact some of the companies, local or like the developers, others who won't want to put money into to some of these campaigns? Yes.
So in the end, right, someone will figure out how to get dark money into a campaign one way or the other.
And this will make
So how about the political parties? What happens? Because that's something with the money that goes to political parties. I guess that's I guess they can make a donation, and then the party will make a determination.
Correct.
How they want to blow it. So that's the other way. It's actually better for the political parties because it is a way of shielding some of the money.
That is a true statement. It does. Now you may see the parties may get more money coming in too. There's always, as with every law that's impacted, people are going to find a way around it.
I mean, we're seeing real commercials for Kerry Lake that are paid by the Yuma Republican Party because I assume some PAC trust me, the Yuma Republican are beautiful people. They don't have enough money to buy, beer on a Friday night usually.
And you see that, and then there's also the flip side of it is we're hearing more and more about individual parties or folks from the other side trying to influence outcomes in the other party. And there's no really, without this, there's little to no way to see how.
Chris is a maybe on this one. I can see both sides of this.
Yeah, it is one, and I think that's been the challenge for it all along. There are folks that believe strongly on both sides, and it's a good argument. We believe that anything that will help in the transparency of the funding.
See, my thing is that as people who want to change how local government works, right, they already have the power of the local government behind them to keep things the same, and then they already have 90% of the press is already selling their story. So I feel like this is kind of possibly the balance.
Yeah, tend to agree, and we could spend the rest of the time talking about how important it is for people to be willing to stand up and call out something that's when it's wrong and let their name be behind it, and then other people in the community have to be able to back them up to protect them. So it's a challenge, but
Bruce is saying Healthcare Rising is connected to a healthcare workers union out of California.
Yeah, well, who ran that initiative? It's the same organization, I believe, that ran 307 last year, or the one last year that was also trying to target the healthcare workers.
All right, right now, D. Simone's feeling a no. 308. This is Dreamers Tuition.
Yeah, now we're the 300 series are the ones that we go into that
Mercedes-Benz.
that the legislature
close
that the legislator has voted, but they've referred state statutes to the citizens. Sometimes it's because of the nature of it. They believe it's something the citizens should have the opportunity to weigh in on. Sometimes it's because there's been issues that the citizens have weighed in on prior, and that's kind of the case in this one. There's the Prop 30, I believe it was Prop 306 in the 1990s, which limited who was eligible for in-state tuition, was passed by the citizens, and now this would repeal a portion of that would allow graduates of Arizona high schools who have been residents for a minimum of 2 years to obtain in-state tuition at the universities. So it's not giving them money to go to the universities. It's just saying they'll pay in-state tuition versus paying out-of-state tuition, which is the current ruling from the courts.
Chris is a no. There's a variety of incentives for people to come illegally to America. I know it's not the kids' fault, but this is where I'm at.
So Texas has passed this law. Utah's passed this law. What I'm telling you is there is a lot of states who are concerned about immigration, and what they found when these laws passed, the amount of immigrants coming did not change. So there's no direct correlation. You can tell I'm a yes on this one. I am, because
the people who I see behind this. I see every college president, Lee Lambert, all these people, because they're dying. They also need more. They also need more people to go in the debt to go to their universities.
The universities and the community colleges aren't the ones that are hoping for this to happen. And I'll tell you that something that sometimes we forget is if you have, and these are just generic numbers, but they're validated. If you have a college degree over the course of your lifetime, and remember, these folks, when they graduate, will be paying state and federal taxes in the system. But if you have a college degree, you actually contribute more to the tax base in the U.S. than you pull out. Whereas if you have only a high school degree, you actually contribute less in taxes to what you pull out. So either way, these individuals have given a lot of time and effort to get to their education to the point. And if we limit them here and expect them to be productive members of our society, which they are, we're hurting our own cause on that one. And again, this is another one.
So I'm looking at the endorsements on Yes on 308. Bob Worsley, who's one of the worst state senators I've ever seen out of Mesa. Okay. Michael Giles, John Giles, the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, who's yes on Katie Hobbs. Monica Villalobos from the Arizona Chamber, she's on hanging out with Katie Hobbs. Regina Romero, Lujan again, Ruben Gallego, happy hump day, as we like to say. Let's see what else we got here.
Well, there's enough probably people in here that you can pick and choose and make it
Paul
look really
Penzone.
Good. Let's go. The challenge on the opposition side is you look at who you've got there, and if you are really a believer that this is what's driving immigration into our country, then you're going to oppose this bill.
It's a package,
but it's not.
It's a package of incentives that people know. That's where I'm at. It's to me, it's just doing it on all these things you guys talk about with, they're going to pay more taxes. It's the idea that the people who are yes on this don't care about anybody else on there.
There's no doubt. You've got
it's a joke.
There's some folks on both sides that don't care about any of the details and what the actual outcomes would be. But most of these folks that we're talking about have been in the United States the majority, if not all their life. They've been in our school systems the majority of all their life, working through them, striving to succeed, to be successful on it. The state of Arizona has been funding that education to that point. Another issue for another day. And all we're talking about is allowing them in-state tuition. If they end up going either via scholarship or some other way at something that drives them out of state, which they may not do.
I'd be interested in knowing is these dreamers that want the in-state tuition probably get a lot more student aid stuff than the average Arizonan that's not Hispanic or coming from a thing. I would like to know what their net tuition is right now.
And if that is right now they're paying for, they're having to meet this out of state tuition balance. So that's the challenge. It would be an interesting thing. I don't know if that data exists, but what I will tell you is whether it's the out of state or in state that they're trying to get, they're going to get that aid almost no matter where they go, because they're not getting state aid per se. They're getting federal aid. And if they leave the state and we lose them, it's just an impact on Arizona. Some people will say, well, good, but that's wrong for a lot of reasons, to include our workforce. Some of the students we're talking.
See, my thing is when you're
talented.
in Phoenix and talking about the amount of workforce running around, they're not having this discussion as much as we are. Okay, we're the losers in workforce. Okay, for a town of 1 million, the percentage of people who are effective workforce is pathetically low. And I can see why down here everyone's all excited about this.
I agree. We are definitely in a worse workforce situation than they are up in Phoenix, but even Phoenix, they're still short. They're short on engineers. They're short on folks that are getting high technical degrees that many of these students go and achieve. And if they're going to still be in our community, don't we want to give them the best opportunity to succeed and contribute?
I might keep you for one more segment after, and then you're done at 8:15. All right. I know you got to go move stuff.
But we're going to get through all 10.
We got to.
We're going to get through.
All right. It's 7:48 already. It just
see what happens when we start getting into the debate back and forth. It all slows the process down.
All right. 7:51 in the morning. Christy Simone, Ted Maxwell. We're going over your ballot propositions. We actually did 8 already out of the 10.
Chris was kind of shocked when he just said, hey, we've only got 2 more left. And I said, I think they're going to be 2 that we can.
I was in total shock.
Although I know your position already on 310, so that one may lead to a little more discussion.
I got to explain that a little bit more, so we got to do that. So 309, the old 309er requires, I'm sure this is voter suppression for some people, voter ID, date of birth and voter ID number for mail-in ballots, and eliminates the 2-document alternative to photo ID for in-person voting.
And this does have 2 pieces to it, and you've described them both very well. One is it requires, if you're submitting a mail-in ballot, you have to provide not only your signature, you still have to do that, but you also have to give your date of birth, and then it says voter identification number. Well, the voter identification number is one of a list of several different things. Your driver's license, it could be a BAI, a identification card, but it's got to be an official issued BIA. Sorry,
that's what I make sure. Okay,
yeah,
that's Bureau of Indian Affairs.
It has to be an officially government issued identification card of some purpose.
Okay,
and then the second phase of that one is if you are voting in person, you have to have a photo ID. This law also requires DMV to issue free of charge any state identification to anybody who requests it. So it's not a driver's license. They basically just have to, if somebody comes in and says, I want a state identification, and they've got proof of citizenship in the US, they can be issued one of those. So it attacks it. What that is trying to fix is there's folks that believe it is too easy not to vote in theory for somebody else by bringing in 2 forms of ID that are 2 forms of identification that shows your name, who you claim to be, is linked to a bill at an address that's firmed, because you can bring in an electric bill and a water bill, and that's verification of who you are. So that's where you get the argument that people say you're making it harder for people to vote. Well, the thought is if DMV gives everybody a free card, then it's really not making them hard to vote. It requires an action, obviously.
Sure.
So this is one,
sometimes you have to treat your own vote right to vote as sacred, right? Well, and if you got to go get your damn ID, go get it.
And personally, I am a huge mail-in voter. I know you'd like to go out as part of what you say is your civic duty, and you do it. It brings something to you, and bless you for doing that. But I like the idea that I can mail it in, and I can track it, and I can see if it's received, and I can do all that. And so I personally have no problem writing down my date of birth and another voter identification number. I do want to ensure that the mail-in ballots are as accurate. And even if people say they are, which I believe they are, I don't think there's any problem with our mail-in system.
But not so great Jimmy Carter said mail-in ballots is where all the fraud happens. That's what he said. That was what that whole after the 2000 election. That's why Europe doesn't do mail-in ballots. For your convenience, Ted, we're opening up the whole thing. This is where all the crap happens.
So I Yeah, we may make it to that. Have to go to the next session on that one. Because the
We
problem
are.
is we don't have the system to do it in person. If the only way we could do in-person voting is if we open it up for like a month right now. There's no way, if everybody believes we could vote on a single day right now, we do not have the
Hold
authority.
on, let's go to Eastside Matt.
It kind of is open for a month. I mean, you can start voting in person for early voting today.
Yeah, you're correct. That is true.
Ted, we're blowing money on crap all over the place. Right? If there's something worth blowing money on,
It's
right?
It's
our
ironic.
elections.
I thought this would be the 309 would be one that would be pretty simple because I think we're both probably personally we're both probably a yes on this one.
Right.
And now you're going.
Well, we got to do the whole mail-in ballot thing, right? So because
That's for another show, Chris. We're talking Prop 309 right now. Are you a yes or you a no?
I'm a yes.
Okay.
I'm a yes.
Problem solved.
Well, you brought in the difference of Chris likes to walk in, blah blah
Man,
blah.
I had you on point for half of your show. We got through 5 yeses real quick, and now we're going down the rabbit trails. Now, I agree, and that I think is another. I believe strongly in continuous improvement. I think that's a business is always going to continuously try to improve, and too often we look at our election systems and we don't think we should try to continuously improve them. Yes, we should. Let's find out how we can make them better.
So we don't have enough time to do 310. I'm going to hold you over for
Absolutely.
one more segment. Jesse Lugo's on after you. And then, but we're going to put Bill Beard on for 2 minutes.
Oh, Bill's always
because of course
this is going to be good.
elections.
No, this will be great.
Bill Beard, what you got, my friend?
The fact that you want to say that we can't do in-person voting as a country on one day is, to be blunt.
And Bill, I know where you're going to go, and I'm hoping you're going to tell me that it's because the way we could do it is if we make it a federal holiday.
You don't even need to make it a federal holiday. The reality is that in this country, citizens have the right to vote, but they have the responsibility to do it. That
Agreed.
means you show up and do it in person. And I'm sorry, mailing it in is fine, but there's a reason the term mailing it in is derogatory. It is because it is something that is done as a matter of course. You cannot treat the people that are going to have responsibility for trillions of taxpayer dollars, be casually dismissed, and mail it in. That is wrong, wrong, wrong. There is the ability, and people just need to get off their lazy butts and go do it in person. I am sorry, you are demonstrably wrong in saying that we cannot vote in person as a country across 50 states and do it in one day.
I assume you're going to allow exceptions for folks who are deployed overseas and other special items. I know that. I'm sure, Bill, I know
The
you.
history of absentee voting goes back over a century, and it is something that can be maintained and should be maintained. The reality is when you say you cannot vote as a country, having 100 million plus people show up and vote in person on one day is bull.
All right.
Look at that.
I love the passion. I think you bring up some valid points. I do think there would be, let me correct what I said. There will be some huge challenges to it. And part of it is we rely so heavily on volunteers to help this process work. I would love to hear how it can be done, how it could work, how many stations we'd have to have. It's a logistics challenge, but we've overcome much bigger logistics challenges in our country. So what I love more than anything, Bill, is the passion.
Bill, send Matt some Ben Gay. He just pulled his back, jumping for the dump button there. So, all right, Bill, thanks for the passion and the call. We come back, one more segment. Bill, Ted and I are going to be doing Prop 310, which some of you may think is a slam dunk. Not a slam dunk for me. I have questions. I got issues. Welcome back to Wake Up Tucson, Christopher D. Simone, Ted Maxwell. SALC is here. Jesse Lugo is going to be on in just a bit.
We should have brought Jesse in last hour. That could have kept it going. We actually, of all the propositions we were going to talk about, I didn't think 309. That's where Ted, you introduced a concept you shouldn't have introduced on the radio today.
It's only radio. It's so simple.
We're going to have this is when Ted gets everyone fired up, we're going to put hashtag red for Ted. This is what we're going to, everyone's getting all. Of course, Noah's only lit you up with 2 emails so far, so.
No, well, it's, again, I know Noah said he'd love to come talk education sometime, and I'm not against that just because I actually think Noah would find out that we probably agree a lot more than he thinks. But I know there's some fundamental things that we don't agree on in the education field. And Bill, I mean, Bill Beard's one of those ones that you turn to all the time for knowledge and information about how our politics runs, how the election systems work, and all that. So I think 95, if not more, on this stuff that Bill and I would be in agree with, probably even higher than that. And,
Sure.
And I will say I truly believe, could our country do it all in one day? Yes. I think because of the systems we've set up and we've currently got in place, and that's not a reason not to go out and try something, but we've got to make sure that whatever we go to, it's going to work.
All these other countries are doing usually all in-person voting, right? I know they're not as big or as expansive, a lot of them, but at the same time, they don't do mail-in balloting, right? Make it a weekend, whatever we need to do, and have a nice life, right? That's my take. I don't. Let's get off of this.
Yeah, I know. And otherwise, we can't get through 310. But
all right.
But Bill, I may reach out to you because I'd like to hear more of your thoughts on how we can successfully do it.
All right, so we got one last. If you're just clicking in, Ted and I for the last hour have been doing all the ballot propositions, and I'll before this is all over, by Thursday, DSimoneHQ.com will have my voting for especially school boards, who you should be voting for in the school board elections, and then also all these propositions. So if you miss it, DSimoneHQ.com and hit the endorsements page, then hit the restaurants page and go eat at a good place. Now 310. This one, there are people who are in shock because I've said, well, Chris isn't that excited about the Fire District Safety Act. Okay, so it's 1/10 of 1 cent of a sales tax that's going to be collected statewide for 20 years. First of all, I don't like any tax for 20 years, and requires collections to be deposited in something called a Fire District Safety Fund, which I think the prop may create. Does that sound right?
And it looks to me, Chris, and this is one that I'm fully in line with you. This is something that I'm going to go dig a little bit more into just so you learn more about it. I think this is what I'd call the biggest challenge on all these propositions is they're all going to be down ballot.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to 310, you're going to read it on semblance and make a decision one way or the other. But there's more detail in it. It is going to provide a 0.1, so it's a tax increase, a 0.1% tax increase to the state sales tax for 20 years. And then that 0.1 of a cent on all of our sales, which is significant money, will be deposited into the Fire District Safety Fund. And as we were trying to scramble and figure out how much we really knew about this, we realized that there's 3 different ways that's distributed. The first tranche of money is distributed based on your total property tax of your rural district. Right. And I know what your concern is. There's a big difference between a rural district inside Pima County and a rural district in Bisbee.
Correct.
So they're not all equal. Now, the way they distribute this money, it looks like they take some of that in consideration. There's a tranche based on property tax for the districts. The second funding distribution goes to any fire district that received less than 3% of the, let's get this right, 3% of the total amount of monies transferred to all districts through that period. So if you don't reach 3%, then there's another pot of money that goes into that. And because it appears by the language, there's also private donations to this fire fund. So I'm going to do some more research and I'll get back to you, but it may not be in time for your.
So my doubts on this really come from years ago. I had a brother Knight, who was a retired, officer up higher up in lifelong, Chicago area, firefighter.
Right. And
he got asked to sit on one of the local fire district boards. And he had to get off after about a year because his thing was they have so much money, right? The commanders make amazing amount of money. They're really an EMT company because usually up in the northwest side of town it's mostly EMT, not fires, right? And then I saw what people like Randy Carrer was making as the Golder Ranch chief and all this stuff and then them playing politics. And I said, so that's what my concern is there. I think there's fire districts that have more than enough money to do their work. Okay. And you can't treat Northwest Fire or Golder Ranch the same as some fire thing that's up in the White Mountains or some really rural area. So then it goes to the safety fund. And then who determines who gets the money out of the safety fund, right? Who gets appointed to that? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like this is a 20-year tax increase with not much. I feel like, give me this. Let's have a discussion about really rural fire departments as opposed to a Golder Ranch or a Northwest, which is a suburban, which people that have been on those boards have told me they're making more than enough dough to pay for everyone's bills and everything.
And I think one of the things as we look into this more is to look at what those three distributions, because the final distribution, which we didn't talk about, is spread evenly amongst all the fire districts, regardless of size. So there's obviously the first distribution is based just on size and property tax base for those districts. Then the next two try to equalize some of that money. The question is, how much of the money makes it outside of that first distribution?
Right.
So I think to your point, there's a lot more intricacies on this. The easy, then I think it's kind of where you're leading. The easy one is going, okay, I don't understand enough. Let's vote no.
Yeah.
But then what is the state of those true rural fire districts to have the safety gear and what they need to, and it's not just their gear. I know Will Hummel's got one in there. He talks a lot about it provides for a yes vote, provides their ability to have the medications to treat folks that may be having drug overdoses, or it provides, there's other issues to it that directly relate to the protection of the citizens. But the question comes down to, what's the safety fund do?
Right.
We've seen that on those before.
Again, the funding versus rural versus suburban. There's a lot of questions I have about. There's too many moving parts to this thing, also, for me. And 20 years tax, not a fan of that either. So I'm a no. That's where I'm at. All right,
easy enough. Look at that. We got all 10 done.
Let's take questions before we let Ted go. Let's go to Al real quick on line 3. Al, what's up, my friend?
Okay, I got a question about the last one. They already have a tax in place for this. So if they get a new tax, are they canceling the old tax, or are they going to have two taxes? I've asked one show about this, and I just got shined on, and they read the proposition. What do you know about it?
So you're saying there's already a public safety tax out there, is what you're telling me, Al?
The way I understand it, there's already a tax out there for the firemen and everything else, and they don't get enough from it. So now they want another one. Does it cancel one out, or do they both keep going?
I would tell you that if there is another one, I don't think there is another one.
Yeah, I think if you look at what breaks out, there may be embedded in our state statutes where a certain percentage or some of the sales tax goes to them, but I don't believe there's one specifically. But that's a great question. That's something when I go back and do a little more digging on this fire safety fund, I'll see how it's funded currently.
I would tell you, Al, that if there is some other tax, that this does not cancel.
Oh, no, it doesn't. There's no doubt. This is additive to the current state sales tax, because if whatever the part that makes up the 5.5, I think is the current number for the state sales tax, is all embedded in that total amount. This is just adding a 0.1%. So it is a tax increase.
All right, Al, I got to get going. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Bye-bye.
You're welcome, my friend. Dr. Neal, of course, wants to know, is there money in that tax for forestry and vegetation management, which also is a problem? Right? I would say no.
I would bet that's a no, because it is the fire safety fund, and I think it is supposed to be focused on safety gear as well as safety supplies.
And then the last one, Bill number 2. Bill, you're on with Chris and Ted. What's up?
Hey, morning, guys. Quick one. Number one, any new tax, I don't care how small it is just an albatross. They'll raise it, and they'll keep raising it, and you can't get rid of it. The other thing is 20 years? Come on. That's ridiculous. If you want this thing to go, give the people a chance to get out from under it if it turns out to be a boondoggle or bad. Put a sunset clause in for 5 years, and it automatically will be killed at 5 years, and if they want to bring it back, then you vote on it again. That's real simple.
And Bill, that's a great point. We've been advocates for a long time on sunsetting taxes, locally, statewide.
It's the only way you can protect the taxpayer.
And what you are seeing is, to your point, an increase in the number of years people are adding to these things. It used to be 5 years was kind of the standard. I won't call it a standard, but a standard sunset for a tax increase. And now you're seeing them expand it to 10, 20 years.
I'd be going the other way, down to 3.
Bill and I are sunset clauses for most laws, that they got to go back and prove it to you.
That's a whole nother show, but there's been a lot of discussion on that. It should not most laws have sunset clauses. I mean, we just talked about one earlier. We're eliminating the tax exemptions for veterans who served in wars prior to World War I. Well, that's still on our books. We never really go in and clean that up yet. Every year.
They never do.
And
they never do.
Yet every year there's about 250 to 300 new statutes on the law, but we never go in and clean them up.
All right, Bill, thanks for the great call.
You bet.
Ted, thanks for the time and the knowledge and the Red for Ted moments and everything.
Always appreciate it, Chris, and look forward to being on and have a fun conversation with Jesse.
All right, Ted Maxwell, have a good day, sir.
Thank you.